Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. Mark Moyer's got another great networking event Thursday night. Check out winagainacademy.com. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Frank King to the Wolff Den. Frank, how's everything going today?
I'm looking a little pink. What is it? Can you see that? I don't see myself. I just see sort of a pink chartreuse box.
You don't see it at all? I don't know. That's weird. I see you fine. My lighting's off, as my friend Brent, who's watching, will tell you. My lighting is not good.
Yeah, that's somebody who's watching. Say, do you see Frank, or do you see like a big pink box?
I see it clearly here, but
okay. Well, as long as you can, they can. Doesn't matter if I can.
I think they will. But hope everybody had a great holiday weekend, long holiday weekend, a great Labor Day. Happy Rosh Hashanah. For those, he says you look better than me, but he wears glasses. So we don't really know. Take it for what it's worth. Frank, give everyone a quick introduction of who you are, and then we'll get right into it.
First, I want to know about that academy you mentioned. Is it some kind of networking thing?
Yeah, Win Again Academy. It's mostly sports related, but I guess some good networking stuff I could get you in on.
I do a couple of those where it's speakers, mostly coaches, anybody who wants a TEDx. Okay. Because I've got 6 of them. Thank you. I'm a comedian by trade. Told my first joke in the 4th grade. Everybody laughed, including the teacher, who was hysterical. I thought I'm going to be a comedian. 12th grade, there was a talent show. Nobody had ever done stand-up before. I did a stand-up, won the talent show. Went home, said to my mama, I'm going to be a comedian. She said, son, you're going to college first. I don't care what you do when you get done. You can be a goat herder for all I care, but you are going to be a goat herder with a degree from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So I went to college, Chapel Hill. There I am. I got 2 degrees, actually, and came close to getting a 3rd. If I'd been smart, I would have gone to summer school, picked up those last 2 econ courses, and I have a degree in economics. Moved to San Diego, went to work for my first wife's father's insurance company because A, I couldn't find a job, and B, that's what my first wife, that was kind of her lifestyle, life map. Her dad worked in insurance. Her grandfather worked in insurance. It's a steady business, so I did that. And she hated comedy, or hated the idea of me doing comedy. So I wasn't going to open mic night. And a couple of years in the marriage, I realized, being someone who's, depressed and living with chronic suicidal ideation, I was going to kill myself if I didn't change something. My second thought was, wait a minute, I could divorce my wife, quit my job, try comedy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, hell, I can still kill myself. That's how I got into comedy. That's my 3rd TEDx talk, Suicide, the Secret of My Success. I did that in clubs for 2,629 nights in a row, nonstop, 7 years and change. I took my second wife with me. She just came along for the ride. Still my wife, by the way, after 34 and a half years. And then did some radio, did a year and a half of radio. Raleigh, North Carolina, where I'm from, they called. They said, it's the #1 morning show in town. We can't make a deal with our other host. Would you like to, be the second banana? Sure. So I took a #1 morning show and drove it to number 6 in 18 months. One of my proudest accomplishments. A friend of mine said, man, you didn't just drive that show into the ground. You drove it into Middle Earth. That is true. Then the clubs began to close. So my act had always been clean. I'd written jokes for Leno for 20 years. At that point, I guess 10 years. And so I did the corporate comedy circuit, the rubber chicken circuit, after dinner, after lunch at conferences, making crazy money, like $5,000 for 45 minutes of clean comedy. And then 2007, 8, 9, 10, the recession, speaking / comedy business dropped off 80%. We lost everything we'd ever worked for in 25 years in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. That's when I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like. Went to the barn, shoved the gun in my mouth, pulled the hammer back, see if I could do it. Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger. A friend of mine had never heard me say that out loud before. It was at a keynote. He came up afterwards and said, hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger? Oh, hey, man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'd always wanted to make a living and a difference. I always wanted to be a speaker, a funny speaker. I wanted to become a speaker who was simply funny, but I had no idea what I could teach anybody. And then I read Judy Carter's book called The Message of You, Turning Your Life into a Money-Making Speaking Career. About halfway through the book, I realized, damn, I could talk about, mental health, because my family, more nuts than a squirrel turd. And I had a close call with suicide, and I lived with mental depression and chronic suicidal ideation, I could get some training in suicide prevention, and I could keynote on suicide prevention. The next thing I thought was, well, how am I going to rebrand from comedian to speaker? And my wife goes, do a TED Talk. And I said, what's a TED Talk? That was, by the way, 6 TED Talks ago. I applied. I got my first one on the first try. And I came out on stage at age 52 as depressed and suicidal. Nobody knew. My wife, my family, my friends, nobody had any idea how close I'd come to killing myself and what I lived with. And then I got phone calls from 2 other TEDx events. Do you have any more mental health topics? Yes, I did 2 more. Then I applied for 3 more and got those. So I got 6 in the can, all on mental health. And I speak on suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue. Because what I discovered was, even though 1 person dies by suicide every 9 minutes in the US, that's 146 a day. That's like a 737 going to the ground like a lawn dart. Everybody gets killed and hardly anybody's talking about it. But if you bring it up, Matt, if you mention the words depression and suicide out loud, almost everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
And there aren't many men who are willing to stand up on stage and reveal that they have emotional issues, mental problems. So, which is great for me, because if I'd known, Matt, how much money there was in crazy, I would have been doing this a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot to unpack there. You and I were talking right before we came on about, timing is everything. You were supposed to be a guest on this show, I don't even know, earlier the month, last month, and something came up, had to cancel, so we rescheduled for today. Today happens to be smack dab in the middle of National Suicide Prevention Week, which is part of September, which is National Suicide Prevention Month. And then you got Friday is National or International Suicide Prevention Day.
Yep.
So timing couldn't be better. And I'm a Same Here CEO. I champion for mental health. Same Here is a global mental health organization that is just trying to keep the conversation forward, believing that everything should start from the top down from a CEO perspective, and make an environment that's, open and easy for people to share their feelings and experiences. Hashtags 5 and 5 and Be Here Tomorrow, which is perfect for kind of what you just said. 5 and 5 is that everyone's dealing with some type of mental health issue, whatever, there's levels and scales, and we'll talk about that. And then Be Here Tomorrow is, Be Here Tomorrow, suicide. We can help. Everyone can get some help if they want it. And so, bringing you on to kind of talk about why you do what you do and how it's, affected the people that you talk to. And so we're glad to have you here. We'll talk a little bit about your TEDx business. We'll talk about comedy, which I'm a big fan of. And so it's, it's kind of a crazy story because, again, timing is everything. We talked to had someone on the Wolff Den who was getting ready to kill themselves, and they saw a Robin Williams talk or comedy, and it kind of just hit them, and that was it. And it's like, all right, now let's, the rest of our life, let's do this. And what people don't understand is it's not a choice, right? I'm not sitting here to choose to kill myself.
Yeah.
You'll talk more about how it affects you, but it's like you can't stop it. You can't prevent it. And I had my own mental health issues. Never got to the level of thinking I would ever harm myself, always knowing I was going to be okay, which is a very comforting feeling when you have these issues, but you're like, you know what, everything's going to be okay. I got to figure out how to get past this. And it never ends, right? It's probably for the rest of your life. So let's talk about the first time that you knew that this was a problem for you. And what did you do?
Well, it was in the early 80s when I was married to my first wife, who's a lovely woman. We just didn't belong together. And I was selling insurance, great business, but I hated it with a passion. And I wasn't doing stand-up. And one day in it was January 84, I think, driving down Highway 163 in San Diego, about 5 o'clock in the evening, which is the low point of my day, biorhythm-wise. I thought, I could do this, I could do that, or I could just kill myself. And I thought, whoa, where'd that come from? And so that's chronic suicidal ideation, by the way. It's my car broke down a couple of years ago. I had 3 thoughts unbidden. 1, get it fixed. 2, buy a new one. 3, I could just kill myself. It's always on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. And the benefit of that is when I talk about it on stage, every keynote I've given since 2014 has been one person at least in the audience, sometimes more, who have chronic suicidal ideation. They don't know it has a name. They think they're just some kind of freak and completely alone. And when I say that out loud, a young woman came up crying, because she said, I thought I was alone. And when I heard you say that out loud, I began to weep. So that's, and by the way, I've worked with Robin Williams a couple of times.
Yeah, it's powerful because, and I didn't even realize it almost until I experienced it and I shared my story, because we talk about ending the stigma, right? And we talk about, especially in males, they're just, we're macho and we don't want to show the vulnerability. But, and this happens, I think this goes with a lot of things in life, not just talking about mental health. But when I shared my story for the first time, like publicly with Same Here, and we blasted it, the same thing happened. I had people sending me messages, man, I didn't know this was, or, I'm dealing with some stuff myself. And what I realized is it's never going to be difficult for me to talk about this ever again. And it was all just because I shared it. And so I feel like once you share it and you kind of get that out there, it becomes less and less of a big deal to talk about it. And that's what we really need, right? It's the conversation about it, because you can make this whole speech and hit someone to understand that they're dealing with something that's real, and that everyone else, I don't care who you are, you're not unique in this world. Someone else in this world is dealing with the exact same thing that you've done. Some of them have gotten past it. Some of them couldn't get past it. There's a whole lot of levels on the outcome of what happened, but there's a ton of other people there who are dealing with what you're dealing with, and people who want to help.
Yes. And my clients often say to me when I get there, look, we just brought you in here to start the conversation. Because as you said, if you start the conversation, it gives people in the audience, if I go up on stage and I'm vulnerable, I believe vulnerability, as Brene Brown would say, is my superpower. It gives other people in the audience permission to give voice to their feelings and experiences surrounding these things without worry of recrimination. And Brene Brown also said something that I'd said many times, but not quite as eloquently as this. She was talking about her mental illness. And she goes, I'm so comfortable in my darkness, I can sit comfortably with you in yours. That is exactly where I am. I put my phone number on the screen every keynote that I do. And I go, look, if you're suicidal, call the lifeline. If you're just having a really bad day, call a crazy person. Here's my cell. And about once a week, once every 2 weeks, somebody calls, they got a problem themselves, or they have a relative, a loved one, they're looking resources,
Yeah, it's, and I vulnerability is the word we use, but I think it's a strength. I mean, it takes a strong person to stand in front of strangers or your family members and loved ones and say, look, I need help. I have a problem and I need help, because you just don't know how they're going to react.
Yes. Well, I did a show for an outfit called Clow, CLOW Manufacturing. They make fire hydrants. I've seen CLOW on fire hydrants forever, but I thought it was like an acronym. I didn't know it was like the name of the company. But anyway, I went in, they had a safety day. I did 2 shifts of workers, a keynote for each. And I can't tell you, Clow. The meeting planner and I talked later, several months later. She goes, Frank, you have no idea the impact you had on these people. They're, big, strong, grizzly men. A number of them came into they have 2 nurses on staff because the manufacturing plant, somebody got injured, And so they came in and confessed that they, as I, were suffering from, depression, and wanted the nurses to pull out the EAP, Employment Assistance Program, and figure out what kind of mental health services they could get. So again, it's just about starting the conversation.
Yeah. And with, we're, again, I'm a Same Here CEO, Same Here. The CEO arm is really having to start from the top. And that's the importance of starting at the top, because the people that you deal with and you're speaking in front of, they have to have leadership who understands the importance of this, to want to have someone come in to have that conversation and then offer the resources afterwards for the fallout. That's probably a bad word, but whatever happens from your people hearing this and maybe understanding, and then now feeling comfortable to want to get help or share, and have to be able to help them in some form or fashion. And
yeah.
so if they're not booking you, which is it's not everyone wants to do it. Even if it was free, not everyone's going to want to do it, right?
I just I'm looking up something, by the way, on workplace and CEOs and stuff. So that's why I'm not, but I just got somebody reached out to me about a big company. I'm talking a multinational. Had reached out to me about doing a mental health keynote. And it was a long time before I heard back from them. And she said, listen, I apologize. It took me so long to get back to you. I think we want you to do the mental health talk, but we want you to leave out suicide. Because, they want an upbeat talk.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I said, sure, I can do mental health awareness. I can do that. But I said, P.S., any particular reason they don't want, when you're talking about mental health, me to mention, suicide? I think. But a lot of people think it's a myth that if you mention that word out loud in front of somebody who's actually depressed, it's going to give them the idea.
Yeah.
Suicide? What a great idea.
Yeah.
Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
Trust me, it's crossed their mind. I'm looking up suicide prevention in the work.
I feel like it's one of those things that you don't get the idea. And the other part is sometimes you can't get the idea out, right?
Yeah.
You can't get rid of the idea.
Suicide prevention it's called workplace suicide prevention.com. And it's all about what companies can do from the C-suite to the middle managers on down. It's a program where you make mental health a part of your safety initiatives.
Which it is.
Yeah. I just got back from a big safety convention in Nashville last week. 1,000 safety managers. And I did a breakout on men's mental health and how 8 out of 10 suicides nowadays are men, mostly Caucasian, age 45, 54. Construction has the highest rate of suicide. It's a male heavy occupation and it's rough and tough guys. Like you said, they're not going to reach out for help. And you also said something else. It's not just mental health. Men tend not to reach out. They wait too long if they get a lump in their testicle. They don't get the PSA for the prostate. They don't have a colonoscopy. There's a guy I was watching TV last week, and some record producer in his late 40s just died of colon cancer. It was diagnosed a year ago as stage 3 cancer. You know what? It doesn't start as stage 3 cancer. Yeah. If you'd had a colonoscopy at 45 when they told we should, chances are they would have gone in, snipped out the whatever, and watched it. And
no, I'm guilty of that. For many years I didn't go to the doctor because nothing was really wrong, but there's so much stuff going on. And then I went when I started to have some depression, and they put me through the ringer thinking it was everything else but that. I kind of knew it was, but I didn't want to say it. So I got the colonoscopy, the endoscopy, check out everything. I was losing weight, like figuring out, is there something wrong with your stomach? And but that's it. It's just help. People they're afraid of getting the bad news, which is never going to be worse than ignoring anything.
Yeah, I got a year or so ago, my prostate for some strange reason is twice normal size. And my PSA jumped from 4.5 to 7.5. So my urologist said, we need to do a biopsy. So it took 12 little chunks out of my prostate. And then he called my wife and she goes, he was almost giddy. And I said, that's probably because he doesn't call many wives and utter the phrase, it's benign.
Yeah.
But as soon as I got the digital exam and my primary care said, this thing's too big, you need to go see a urologist. Straight to the urologist. And I go back every 6 months, just in case I get a blood test, PSA. And, the nice thing about Zoom is you can't do a digital exam over Zoom. So
can't do that.
But, that I've got heart issues. I had 2 aortic valve replacements, a double bypass, a heart attack, and 3 stents, all from my family, nothing lifestyle, just, bad genes. But the benefit, Matt, of that is that somebody is looking under my hood every 6 months.
Right. That's the good thing. Trying to find it early. That's the key to everything, right? Finding it early.
Yeah, catch it early. Prostate cancer is imminently curable. Colon cancer, you catch it. You take out the what are they? We found some little bumps. What do they call them? And they go in, they strip them out, and then they keep an eye on, make sure they don't come back. It's just testicular cancer. You find a lump, for God's sake, or heart disease. I mean, when I was working the ships doing stand-up comedy, I would say, anybody here besides me have had your chest cracked? Hands go up. And invariably, unless a woman observes the symptoms of the heart attack, the man will put off going to the hospital. Sometimes for a couple of weeks. One guy goes, I said, how long from the time you had the onset of symptoms until you had the, your heart surgery? And the guy goes, 5 years. And what happened was he broke his leg at the 5-year mark, went to the hospital. They ran an EKG. They realized he had a series of small heart attacks already, and they did bypasses. A man will put it off, and rationalize. It's just got to be that burrito from Taco Bell.
Yeah, we talk about that. Like, again, going back to the same here in mental health, is be like, if you broke your arm, you wouldn't just try and be like, all right, my arm's broken. So, mental health is health. It's another thing. Mental health is health. And so we need to take care of the whole body, mind, being, spirit, whatever, physical, mental, spiritual.
Yeah. And for all its faults, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, I mean, it's not perfect, but it eliminated pre-existing conditions, and I was born with 3 or 4. And then it also did what's called parity between mental and physical health coverage. So if I have a heart attack, my plan's 80-20. They pay 80, I pay 20 after the deductible. If I have a bipolar meltdown or something, they pay 80 and I pay 20 and after the deductible. So there's parity now in care, mental health and physical health insurance coverage, I think, which is extremely important because my previous policy back before the Obamacare, I think I got 6 visits with a psychologist in a year. Yeah. So as suicidal as I was not going to the psychologist because the last thing I needed was another pre-existing conditions in exchange for 6 visits.
Right.
I mean, ironically, I'm this close to killing myself, but I don't want to end up, if I survive, with another pre-existing condition.
Mental health, I think it's one of the biggest problems we have in the US, because you see so many people walking around and this is visible, like a visible mental health issue, and they can't afford to get it for whatever reason. They can't get it. And that's, there's a ton of those people who are just living life and not bothering anybody. And then you have a whole other host of people who are inflicting harm to themselves and other people around them. So I think it's a I don't know what you're going to call a pandemic, but it's one of the biggest problems I think we have in the US.
Well, and we, 2 co-authors and I have written 3 books so far of a 4-book series. The 4th one should come out this fall on men's mental health. It's sort of a chicken soup for the soul. Each book has 12 guys, 12 stories, what their problem is and how they're coping. And we did it again because so many men, 8 out of 10 suicides are men, and there's very little literature out there for guys. Although I gotta tell you, the book is bought by more women than men. I think because they've got a male in their life, father, son, brother, cousin, who's living with mental illness, and they can't figure out, how to help the man. The guy that did the foreword for our first book, Dr. Paul Gwinnett, specialized in suicidal men. And the reason he did that was these were all referrals from other psychologists and psychiatrists who were terrified that the guy would kill himself if the family would sue. So his entire practice was suicidal men. And he said, look, here's the thing. Men don't wake up in the morning and go, I think I need to see a psychologist. You got to put them in a corner oftentimes, almost always. Look, honey, I love you, but I'm not going to put myself and these kids through this. I'm going to leave you unless you get help. Or at work, look, Bob, another episode like this and you're not in therapy and the company offers it, then you're done. Right. So you kind of got to shove a guy in the corner and give him an ultimatum. Otherwise, you're not going to get him into treatment. Right. Now, the good news, Paul Gwinnett would say, is once they buy in, they're all in and they're looking to help other guys. So that's the upside.
Yeah, we have a guy, Matt Zerker, who's got an app called Tether, TETHR, which is just a male community of people with, to kind of share their stories and talk about mental health. And because it's lacking, right? The ability we talked about, the ability for a man to just talk about, and I want,
Well, and that's improving as well. In Australia, they started something called the shed movement. Shed in Australia is what we call a garage here. they found if you put two guys under the hood of a car working on it, they, not looking each other in the eye, they can talk about anything, even important things. So the shed movement is, whether it's woodworking or working on cars or whatever it is you would normally do in your garage with another guy, that's the movement. They have the barbershop movement in the U.S. because for African Americans, because for blacks, males, the barbershop's always been kind of a safe place to express yourself, and so they're training barbers in suicide prevention and how to look for signs of depression, thoughts of suicide, and how to talk about it. Because again, the barber's behind you. You're not looking at each other in the eye. And at the VA, Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW, figured out most of those bars have dart teams and tournaments. And they figured out if guys are looking down the lane and throwing darts, again, they're not looking each other in the eye. They can talk about anything.
That's interesting.
So it's getting better. And the good news is, I think, and I say this in my keynotes, 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent. They're not sure. And 9 out of 10 give hints in the week leading up to an attempt. So that's what I teach is how to spot the signs of depression, thoughts of suicide, what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do, and how to find resources. And by the way, somebody once said to me, back to you were talking about choice, it's not a choice. Somebody said to me, choose joy.
Yeah.
And I said, unless you're talking about dishwashing liquid, I think I'm out of luck.
Yeah.
I would have done it 40 years ago if I could do it like that.
Yeah. Well, let's go. I want to talk about comedy because that's where this whole thing started. And I'm a huge fan of comedy. Love a good stand-up comic. It's who did you love? Why did you think you wanted to do comedy aside from cracking jokes? There's a big difference between a class clown and someone cracking a few jokes here and there, and actually getting up on a stage and doing comedy or being an actor, a comedic actor.
Yeah, no, I in 4th grade, I thought to myself, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. And then after I won the thing in 12th grade, I thought I'm in. And then I got on stage, my first open mic night, April 1st, 1984. And about halfway through my 5 minutes, I heard a voice inside my head, "You're home." And then my second thought was, I'm going to do this for a living. I have no idea how, but then I figured it out. And had I known how hard it was to make a living doing stand-up, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Who was your influences growing up?
Mostly the folks that were the influences of my generation, Cosby and Cosby Pryor and the hippie-dippy weatherman, George Carlin.
I love him. Dangerfield?
Beg pardon?
Rodney Dangerfield?
No, I didn't see much Dangerfield as a kid because he waited till like he was 44 to start comedy. Cheech and Chong, even though I didn't know what marijuana was.
Right.
Looks like dog. And then when I got to be a comedian, or as I got older into high school and college, I was watching the Tonight Show. So Michael Keaton was a comedian, one of my idols. And then he went on to be an actor. And that was and then there was Robert Klein, also Tonight Show. Some of the old school guys, some of them still doing comedy. And then when I got into comedy as a comedian, Letterman and Leno, because I did topical jokes. And I wore a sport jacket, tie, button down, jeans, Weegens, no socks. So I was very much a host, like a late night host doing comedy and doing topical comedy. And then I went on the road, and because we were doing beer bars and pool halls and honky tonks with drunk people screaming, "Tell us some jokes we can dance to," I did less of the topical jokes because I'd have to hand out a syllabus and more of just the, like Seinfeld's slice of life kind of.
Yeah.
What are these people?
Yeah.
And I worked with him, as a matter of fact, at Charlie Goodnight's in Raleigh for a week.
We actually just came back from Chapel Hill. We had a wedding there. Had a great time. I know you mentioned that you went to school there at UNC. Yep. Really nice all around that whole Tobacco Road. Just beautiful campus, and obviously great college basketball. So you graduate college, you meet your first wife. You want to do comedy, but you don't. So why didn't you? Obviously, comedy is tough. My sister dated a comedian who's been on, some late night talk shows and tours in the Northeast, but it's really, really tough to be successful. Like to be successful where you're huge and not having to worry about, hey, I'm going to pick up this extra gig for $50 because I need the money, right?
Yeah. No, well, it was my high school and college sweetheart. We dated all that time. And we both graduated same year, same spring. And, you've been dating that long, it's pretty much down to two choices, either get married or, go your separate ways. And that's how I got engaged. She said, look, I'm not going to, we're too old to keep dating at 22. I'm not going to live with you, which would have been my choice, at least with an option to buy. Marry me or I'm out of here. That's how I got engaged. And I tried to tell her that I was going to do stand-up, but I was already working for her father's insurance company. So it's really not her fault, Matt.
Right.
It's like a matrimonial bait and switch. She married an insurance guy. She got a comedian. And the interesting thing is, if I had said, I'm going to go back to school to get a degree in accounting, the time commitment would probably been actually more than the time I was committing to comedy. But she could see a payoff if you become an accountant. She could not see a payoff for doing stand-up. I bumped into her folks a decade later, and in La Jolla, California, where we were living. It's a really nice neighborhood. We were the poorest people in a really nice neighborhood. I bumped into my in-laws and they go, what are you doing here in La Jolla? And I said, well, we own a condo over in the shores. And her mother said, well, I guess that whole joking thing worked out for you. That's how much they didn't get.
Yeah.
I mean, they just weren't wired that way.
But there's two things about this. One, when you're that passionate about something, you have to go for it.
Oh, yeah.
You have to do it. And so if you look back at this, the choice you made to kind of put that off, is it possible that if you didn't marry and you went your other way, that maybe some of this suicide wouldn't have come to the forefront? It might always be there, right? But sometimes things that force it to rear its head.
Yeah, because the major depressive disorder is not really, for me and a lot of people, not situational. I've been most depressed some of the best times in my life.
Right.
What pushed it to the fore is I wasn't pursuing what I believed I was born to pursue.
Yeah.
And the good news was I was suicidal because my grandmother died by suicide. Mom found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I screamed for days. It's in our DNA. It's called generational depression and suicide. And because I was suicidal and knew if I stayed married and stayed in insurance, I'm going to kill myself. So I had nothing to lose by chucking it all and giving comedy a try. Because, like I said, then I could still kill myself and I thought, Matt, I was the only one who ever had that thought process. And I met a half a dozen entertainers and entrepreneurs, same thought process. I hate my life. I don't belong here. I need to be over there. If I stay here, I'm going to kill myself. What the hell? I mean, what is more powerful on this planet than somebody with absolutely nothing to lose? So, mentally, I burned the ships and went to do comedy. No way. I didn't have a plan B. There was no, but I knew my bones.
Yeah. Comedy and entertainment is a huge problem, mental health and suicide.
Oh, yeah.
We lost some of the best people we've had, like the Mitch Hedbergs, and even you look at someone like John Mulaney. When I heard he was doing cocaine, I'm like, John Mulaney doing cocaine? That's outrageous. It's crazy to me. But it's a big problem. And he's lucky that he was able to get help. And, I'm sure he still has his issues. But people like Robin Williams take their own lives. You start to listen to some old Robin Williams stuff. He was warning you about this. I mean, I listened to some of it, and it's scary about the way he talked about life. And, I'm on the bridge. Maybe I should jump.
Yeah, life is not for everybody. And that's what I teach people. Because if you listen to those things and you know what you're listening for, and you're willing to step up and go, hey, are you having thoughts of suicide? Then, because most people want to be saved. I mean, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. My third TED Talk was Mental with Benefits, the Evolutionary Advantages of Mental Illness. And it's exactly what you're talking about. I looked around, all these really talented people also mentally ill. And I thought, this can't be a coincidence. So I did some research, and sure enough, there's a laundry list of celebrities and sports figures and politicians, very, bright, talented, whatever. But they have these other issues. I believe I'm not broken. I was made this way. I think my suicidality and my depression are simply the flip side of my comic ability, imagination, creativity. It's all the same wiring. How could it, it's not two separate things. I can teach you to write stand-up. I can teach you to perform it. I cannot teach you to process information the way my brain does. It just process. I'm on a plane. The woman goes, this is like when the FAA said you could use your iPhone or iPad on takeoff or landing, as long as it's in the airplane mode. She gets to that part of the spiel, but there's nothing written down. They just changed the rules. So she's got to make it up. So she goes, ladies and gentlemen, due to new FAA regulation, if you have small equipment, you can continue playing with it. I'm the only one on the plane laughing. My seatmate thinks I've lost my mind. He goes, what? I go, let's review. Before I can review, she comes back on and goes, if you have large equipment, you're going to have to shove that under the seat in front of you. So I'm down on my knees. I wrote that sitting there moments after she said it. That's just the way my brain processes, information.
Have you seen The Great Depression? A really powerful film with Gary Goldman about depression. He's a very funny comedian, very vocal about his dealing with depression. I think in movies and in television entertainment, they broach the subject, and they've been doing it for a long time. I just watched a series the other day. It had a thing about suicide, and it's we're talking about it, which is great, right? We need to talk about it, but we also need to have the resources and have that are available and have people want to have them. I had a friend who was depressed. There was no doubt. This was many years ago. And he would post stuff online and said, look, you can't write stuff like that online. And people are going to, think that there's something really bad. What's going on? Call me anytime. I'm happy to talk about it. And, everything was fine. It was like an old girlfriend. And then, a couple years later, again, I see him. Hey, is everything okay? Call me. I'll try and help you. He was trying to find a job. He actually was trying to be a stand-up comedian in Jersey. And I guess maybe a year or so after, I heard that he had passed. And I immediately just started to cry. I said, this guy took his own life. I said, they're never going to tell you that he took his own life. But I know the second you told me that he died, that he took his own life. And I scrolled through my stuff, and I was like, I tried to, reach out and be like, hey, and this wasn't even a great friend. It's someone I was friends with, but we talked once in a while. We joked around online. And so you talked about that 8 out of 10 wanting to get the help. That's a big number, because if you're talking about the number of people who are killing themselves, and if you're thinking about 80% of them we could help, that's a huge number. And so what can we do to get more of those people the help that they need, or for them to understand that it's okay?
I would, if you want to help, I would take a class called Mental Health First Aid, mentalhealthfirstaid.org. It's 8 hours. There's an adult version and a youth version, youth mental health. And it's, of course, now it's on Zoom as well as live. And I think it costs $5 to $25 for the 8 hours. And it's just basically a mental health 101. How to recognize the signs and symptoms, depression, bipolar disorder, non-lethal self-harm, thoughts of suicide. And they give you a binder with all that information in there. So if you spot what you're looking for is a pattern. If you spot a pattern, you go back to your notebook and you go, oh yeah, check, can't eat, check, can't sleep.
Yeah.
Has trouble getting out of bed in the morning, rallies in the afternoon, check. I believe they're depressed. So I would say mentalhealthfirstaid.org. Like I said, it's very inexpensive. Some are free, some are $5, some are $25, but that's about as much as it costs. It's a great way to educate yourself. And if I was a parent right now, I would definitely take the youth version, because the youth rate of self-described depression or thoughts of depression and suicide have spiked. Of all the stats throughout the pandemic, the overall suicide rate came down about a 1.5. But the teen suicide rate went up. And depends on also the culture or the ethnic group. Transgender youth, they 40% of transgender youth seriously contemplate suicide. That's 10 times what the average youth, the average young person thinks about suicide.
You made a great point earlier. You said, if you're thinking about killing yourself, call the suicide hotline. But if you're having a day, call me or call someone. So I always say, look, I'm here to help anyone who needs it. But, if there's something really going on that's could get, could escalate quickly, time is a big factor, and you need to get to the people who really can help, the people who are trained to do it and to help.
And the hotline folks, the Suicide Lifeline folks will tell you, look, don't wait till you're standing on the ledge to call us. As you begin to circle down, call us then and let us, call us upstream a little bit. It's a lot easier to help you, if you're not standing on the ledge holding the phone.
People don't know what to do. Did you hear of the case of the girlfriend who basically told the guy to kill himself? I mean,
yep.
That it seems crazy, but there are people, and you don't have to tell someone to do it, but the way you react to how they are telling you or how they're feeling could be that thing that puts them over the edge if you don't react correctly.
She was definitely encouraging him to do it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. She should probably be locked up or something. That's you don't have to pull the trigger to be the one who to hurt someone. But even people with the greatest of intentions, when I had my problem, like, oh, snap out of it, and let me take you out to a meal. Which is, look, I love my friends, my circle. I have as good a circle as anyone can have, but it wasn't helpful for me. And it's hard to tell them that. And even if you do tell them that, they don't understand it unless you've maybe been through it. So it's, now that I've been through this, I understand. And I realize that there are times in my life that I talked to people who were going through some stuff or had some issues, and I probably wasn't as compassionate about it and just said, well, why don't you just do this?
It's human nature. You want to say something, and it's important you say something. And oftentimes people don't say anything because they're worried they're going to say the wrong thing, or they're going to say something, or they just don't know what to say.
Yeah.
But again, you and I guess, as Brene Brown said, I'm so comfortable in my darkness, I can sit comfortably with you in yours. A guy called me the other day. I gave out my number. He heard it on a podcast, or saw it in the show notes, called me. And he was depressed and terribly suicidal. And somewhere in the conversation, he said this, and I picked up an Amtrak schedule, and then he kept talking. And I went, hold on. You picked up an Amtrak schedule? I said, look, I'm not going to do like a lot of people do and ask you to promise not to kill yourself. That's not my, that's not my game. What I am going to ask you to do is not do it in front of a train, because what's going to happen is you're going to step up on the tracks. You will undoubtedly lock eyes with the engineer right before he hits you or she hits you. And you're going to take your life and ruin theirs. So if you're going to go, for God's sakes, don't ruin somebody else's life in the process. I mean,
or you're gonna fail at your attempt, and your life is going to be a lot worse, and other people's life. I mean, there's so many repercussions about suicide and suicide attempts, where people do say it's a selfish act, right? Again, it's not a choice, but there is a selfish component to it.
Right. But there's also a selfless. A lot of people don't understand that suicidality is a three-legged stool. Social isolation, you've crossed a barrier where you're willing to do it. And the third one is called burdensomeness. And the majority of people who are thinking about suicide are thinking about the other people in their lives. And the thought they're having is that they would be better off without me. If I'd killed myself, my wife would have gotten $1 million. I was worth more dead than alive. So she definitely would have been worth, we just filed bankruptcy. She could have gotten everything back and then some.
Yeah.
So it from the inside looking out, it's selfless, because world would be better off. From the outside in, certainly it looks selfish. Look at the collateral damage you're leaving behind.
Well, let's talk about the intersection of comedy and suicide, because it's a delicate balance to be funny about something that's so serious. And I mean, you might have someone in the crowd who tried to kill themselves, and that's hopefully the case, because whatever you're saying is going to help them learn. I think comedy is, look, I'm on both sides. There's jokes that probably should never be told. And then there's jokes that, look, I'm a comedian. It's meant to be funny. It's still funny, even though it's wrong. And, so it's tough. How do you navigate through that? And you've been doing it a long time, but at the beginning, to where you're not really just doing a stand-up set, you're doing an informational, educational thing, but giving some some light-hearted moments in it to, I guess, maybe, take some of the pressure off the people in the audience, right?
Well, there's a reason, Matt, they call it comic relief.
Yeah.
And in my first TEDx talk, there's some really dark humor. I said to the audience, look, I went on to TED.com once I got the, booking to do the TED Talk on suicide, just to see how other people handle the topic. And, there's hundreds of thousands of TED Talks. So I thought there would be quite a few on suicide. There were 3.
That's it.
And then it hit me. Well, and I said to this audience, well, then it hit me. If you're really good at suicide, you're probably not going to be recording a TED Talk.
Yeah.
And you could hear the nervous laughter. And then my grandmother killed herself with an old gas stove. She blew out the pilot light. My great aunt killed herself with an old Loctite refrigerator. I'll spare you the details.
Yeah.
But I said to the audience, what is it with my family and major appliances? I drive past Sears, I tear up.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing about comedians and comedy. In comedy, there is a rule. You can make fun of any group to which you belong. And so because I belong to those groups, I just re-recorded my outgoing message for, my voicemail. And, hey, hi there, ho there, Frank King, living La Vida Loco. Let's see, I may be crazy, but it may just be a lunatic you're looking for. If it is, leave me a message. Thank you. So, I'm sure somebody's going to be offended at some point, but I'm sure most often when I do that, when they call me back, they go, man, I was laughing so hard at that. You are a sick bastard.
Yeah, I watched a TEDx talk the other day. I don't even know how I got on it. It was about sex and marriage. This middle-aged woman, and she was funny. The material she gave, the content was great, but she was very funny, and it caught me off guard. I was like, I did not expect to hear, the comedy aspect of it from her. And I think a lot of TEDx talks kind of have that, funny part to it to kind of engage and bring people in.
Oh, yeah.
There's some great TEDx talks. You've obviously done 6 of them. So you understand actually doing a TEDx talk, but also understand, how do I get a TEDx talk? What's going to be the compelling thing? Tell us about, talk about TEDx and, what does it mean to people who are on the other end, and why is it important for you to do a TEDx if you have compelling content to share?
Yeah, because what they want is an idea worth spreading. And what they like, especially, is idea worth spreading and a great backstory. Like America's Got Talent, the people on there are undoubtedly talented, but, he was in prison for 37 years for a crime he didn't commit. He sang every day. He's here tonight.
Yeah.
So they, and the fact that I was there at 4 years old when my great aunt killed herself using a refrigerator, and I'll spare you the rest of the story because it's gruesome. That when I went up to audition for that one, when I got through that story, their mouths were hanging open. I mean, that's how I got the gig. It's a great story, great idea, and something you're passionate about. So what I do with most of my clients, all of them in the beginning, is figure out, okay, what are your passions? What are you passionate about? Okay, we got to pick one. What are you most passionate about? And then we go from there, and I find the application links. I've got a list of application links because TED doesn't make it easy to find them, because I think they're trying to cut down the number of people who are, attempting it. And then I help you fill out the application. And think about this: the average TED Talk gets a couple hundred applications. So it's essentially a marketing piece. You're one of 200. You have to put something on that application that makes them stop in their tracks and go, I got to read more about this. Twice. The first time was Suicide, the Secret of My Success, Dead Man Talking. I got a call, not an email. I got a call from the committee. You're on. You mean I'm going to audition? No, you're on. And the second time it happened was the next one. The title was Mental Health and the Orgasm, Treat Your Depression Single-Handedly. Same story. You don't have to audition, Frank. You're on. So that made me realize that the title, subtitle, elevator pitch, whatever, has to be really creative to get them to, read the title and then the subtitle and then the description and then why you're the person. The farther we get them down the application, the better chance you're going to get an audition. And then I help people with the audition, because every TEDx teaches somebody something, and the committee will say to you, "Great idea, Frank. What are you going to teach our audience?"
Yeah.
So you better have that prepared. The learning objectives, able tos, how tos, takeaways. And then I help my clients cobble together 12 to 18 minutes, the TED Talk, to make it as good as absolutely possible. Humor is one of the, there's 9 things I believe should be in every great TEDx talk. 1, you should be passionate about it. 2, it should have humor in it. 3, it should have a surprise for the audience or an aha moment. And so I did a keynote the other day, or showcase the other day, 15 minutes. And I didn't have any PowerPoint. I just had a countdown clock, like the television show 24,
Yeah.
behind me. And when I hit the stage, it said 15 minutes, started counting down. I said to the audience, every year in the United States, 47,000 people die by suicide. That's 1 every 15 minutes. And I turned to the clock and I go, that means at this moment, somewhere in this country, somebody in my tribe has less than 15 minutes to live. And the clock's counting down. And they're watching me and they're watching the clock. They're watching me because they're wondering, am I going to let the guy die?
Yeah.
And so with 30 seconds to go, I say, the good news is you can make a difference. You can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as what we're doing right here. And that is starting the conversation. And now it's down to about 8 seconds. I say before their time runs out, and the tech at the back stops the clock at 7 seconds. And I mean, they're laughing, they're crying, they're on their feet. You know, that was a surprise. That was a surprise to the audience. Is he going to let him live or let the guy die? And so that's one thing I think needs to be in every great TED Talk. So I help people find that moment that they can surprise the audience or give an or whatever.
Some people you can't help get a TED Talk.
Well, I've turned people down. You know, I want to do a TED Talk on customer service. Are you really passionate about customer service?
I mean, I am, but it's weird. I wouldn't make a TED Talk about it.
No, I am too.
You and I talked about this before, the type of service that I've gotten this week it's insane. Somebody should do one, but I'm not the right person for that.
Well, I said to her, look, if you came to me and said that I want to talk about the power of empathy in customer service, now that I can sell.
Yeah.
But not just a customer service.
What's the most famous TED Talk out there?
Well, Brene Brown is in the top 25. Bill Gates, when he's talking about the pandemic in 2015 or 17, he's talking about the next big thing, the next big whatever it is going to kill a lot of people in the world is not going to be a war. It's going to be a pandemic. So like 2015 or 17, I can't remember which. He also had one on waterborne illnesses where he releases those mosquitoes. He's got a big fish tank full of mosquitoes. He's talking about all the diseases that mosquitoes carry. And somewhere in there, he lifts the lid on the fish tank and the mosquitoes.
Oh boy.
And of course, people are like, and he goes, relax. None of the mosquitoes are infected.
What's the most powerful one? What's the most powerful one that you've watched?
Start with Why by Simon Sinek. I'm a big believer now because I believe I'm living my purpose and my passion. You know, people say, well, why do you speak about, suicide prevention? Well, my grandmother, my great aunt, my mother, I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. So I began with my why. And when I finally decided that that's all I was going to do as a speaker, no more motivational, inspirational, whatever. January 1st, 2018, I thought, I am a suicide prevention speaker. That's my lane. I'm going deep, not wide. I'm going to become that guy. And, that's my why. I get up in the morning, like the young woman who came up crying, where she said she thought she'd been all alone. That's my why. I mean, I get an email or a DM or a text or something. Somebody hits my YouTube channel with a note about how they came across my video and it made a difference. So I would say if I had to pick, I would pick, start with why.
I haven't watched a ton. There was the one that I saw, Sex and Marriage, was good. I got to find out who that was. And then there was another one, How 5 Simple Words Can Get You What You Want, which is another powerful one.
I'll take a look.
And sometimes it's just the way, like, they're just so good at telling the story and talking about it, because a lot of this stuff isn't rocket science.
No.
And so it's how, can you tell the story in the way that it's going to hit people the way you want it to?
Yeah, I tell my students, look, they go, well, there are already so many TEDx talks on failure. I go, well, it's your take. Every TEDx I've done, it wasn't like I did, original research. I just had an idea. I hit Google to see if I was right. I lined up my resources to back up my idea, other people's work. So yeah, you're not splitting the atom. You're just curating it in a way that nobody else has. And then, of course, add humor to it.
Is there a teleprompter?
No teleprompter, no notes.
So you have to remember. I mean, that's one reason why I don't know that I could do 15, 18 minutes of remembering everything. I'm terrible at that.
Well, what I do, Matt, is I write on my hand.
Oh yeah.
They don't allow you to have notes like on a music stand or anything, but I write a macro outline, Roman number 1, 2, and
as you write on your hat, and you just be like,
yeah, I'm telling you. They don't allow, but if you watch all my TED Talks, a couple of them, you'll see me do this. I covered that. Oh, wait. And the audience starts laughing, and I turn my palm so they can see I've actually written on it. Yeah. I go to my Palm Pilot. Big laugh. Problem with this is I'm always downloaded to the sink. Oh! Again, the comedian in me.
Are you going to do more TED Talks?
Oh, yeah. I'm pitching additional TED Talks right now. One is called Going Viral, how the coronavirus and the cancel culture killed my comedy career. Because I was on one of those ships in the Western Pacific in the middle of February when the pandemic began, broke out. And there were 2 ships in the area, and one was ravaged by the virus, and ours wasn't. Nobody on our ship ever got it. But when I flew back to the U.S., made the mistake of speaking to the media, because somebody tipped them off I was coming into Seattle. I was never quarantined. The CDC office in, the U.S. CDC in Cambodia, where we parked, said, go home. And in Seattle, the CDC interviewed me. They got a group there at the airport, and they said, you're fine, go home. But the media, every story says comedian jumps quarantine. If you type in Frank King comedian quarantine, you'll see Time Magazine, Newsweek, Entertainment Tonight, Lester Holt. I mean, it was page after page after page. London Daily News, London Independent. There I am. So that was my cruise comedy career done. I'd already given up clubs because somebody called me up and they go, hey man, we're going to make sure you never work at another comedy club again. I said, can I get that in writing?
Yeah. Because,
I make 10 times what I make, one keynote is 10 times what I make at, a week in comedy. So
what would you do if you can only choose one? Stand-up comedy, speaker, and then TEDx?
I would do the speaking, because the humor is just a part. I went from being a funny comedian, to a speaker who's simply funny.
Yeah.
And it took a while, Matt, because I'm used to laugh or reaction feedback every 9 seconds.
Yeah.
And in speaking, there's a lot of them just looking at you listening.
Yeah.
And it was unnerving in the beginning. But
who are your favorite comedians these days? Do you have any?
Well, I like Bill Burr until he came out as an anti-vaxxer or said that, the news media was being unfair to Trump. He did something. I'm like, okay, I'm done. There's a guy named Bill Carr, Kerr, Jimmy Carr in England. Filthy, but really well written, and not just, bodily function jokes, but topical, political, really dirty, dark. So I would say Jimmy Carr is probably my current favorite.
Yeah, Bill Burr's got some great stuff. I could see he's a little out there with his thoughts, and the people who he's obviously friendly with and but he still has some great material. There's so many comedians I love. Nate Bargatze is a guy who is a little unknown.
Yeah,
I think is hilarious. Big fan of his.
And Bill's material is, somebody said to me, you need to listen to Bill Burr. And I said, who is he? I can't believe I was not aware of somebody that funny for that, unaware that long. So I went to YouTube, and the first joke I heard him say was, so my mom says, how come you can't be more like your father? So I said, okay, screw you, I'm leaving. I thought, I'm in. Because that's good writing.
I got to send you my favorite. I don't know if Brent's listening, but we quote Bill, and we reenact a scene that he does, a bit that he does on marriage. It's pretty hilarious.
And he's in The Mandalorian.
Yeah. He's big. He's big now. He's getting involved in a ton of projects. He had the F is for Family, right, on Netflix or one of those shows. So real good. Big fan of his. I love comedy. I listen to comedy on the radio. I think going to a comedy show, it just makes you feel good. And laughing it's not the best medicine, but it's great to do.
But the thing about comedy is, the thing about speaking is, I can make as much money as some higher end, more well known, maybe A- comedians per day as a speaker. My speaking fee is $7,500 to $15,000 for 45 minutes. I've never made a 15 yet, but I have made 2 10s for 45 minutes. So I mean, you can be, nobody in the world knows who you are, but you're making that kind of stupid money.
But making an impact too, which is for you too. It's different than just someone. There's a lot of people who make a lot of money speaking, and I think I wouldn't pay him $10 to listen to him talk.
Yes, I know. No. Well, and it's
something for everyone, right? Everyone comedy. My grandma hated Seinfeld. Didn't think he was funny at all. The show, I took her to see Seinfeld didn't think he was funny at all. I think he's great. My favorite show of all time. I think he's funny. He does a lot of the same jokes when I've seen him, but I think he's great. His comedy, his shows, but everyone has different. The same reason why some people think Cindy Crawford and Julia Roberts are beautiful, and some people can't see it. It's just something for everyone. Not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah, and I love Seinfeld. I can't stand that Larry David show, whatever it is.
You don't like Curb. I like Curb.
No,
I get it. I get the shtick is kind of, it's tired and it's the same, but I still do like it. But I understand why people might not. Yeah. Or might look, it's not Seinfeld, right? Seinfeld's done, and that's that. I certainly get that. We'll let you out of here on the same question that we let everyone go. You could pick one person to spend a day with. They could be anyone in the world. You can't be related to them, and they have to be alive. Who are you going to pick?
I was waiting.
People picking. Well, here's the thing: people kept picking dead people who weren't alive that they'd like to have, and people who were really like, oh, my wife or my brother or my son. And I'm like, all right, no one you're related to. We're actually going to try and make it happen for our guests. We've done some outreach for some of the guests. We got a long list of people. Some people have been said more than once. Some are pretty original. One person wants to meet Putin, which obviously we're not going to be able to make it happen. We're probably not even going to try. If they're listening, we're not going to do it. But anyway, give us who do you want to meet and spend a day with, and what would you guys do?
Obama.
Yeah,
and I would shoot the breeze.
We could say shit on here, I think.
And and then go play basketball.
Yeah, is that good? He's at the top of my list, and he's been mentioned a bunch of times in basketball. I always say, is it anything cooler than this guy just hitting a J and walking off and just saying, "That's how I do it"?
Yeah, I'm not particularly good at basketball, but I got lungs and legs. I play both ends of the court. I'd love to just team up and pick 3 more guys and play full court.
Yeah.
All after.
Well, look, you can get anyone to speak or hang out if you pay them enough money. We got a bunch of people who are listening to Obama. We're going to make it happen at some point. I got to get much bigger than I am, or maybe you got to get much bigger than you are, and then we'll make it happen. Really, really great to chat with you. It's an important subject at an important time. I hate the month and the week, and this needs to be talked about every day, 365 days a year, 366 last year.
Yeah.
And we need to get to the point where it's good to have a month because it does give attention, but let's not forget about it. October 1. And, I'm going to do my part. I know you're going to do yours. Reach out to Frank. You can find him online for yourtedxcoach.com if you want to get some more information about TEDx, Instagram, Twitter, thementalhealthcomedian.com, more information there. And let's just, I love the work that you're doing. I think it's great. And I'm happy to help any way I can.
Well, I'm Matt at thementalhealthcomedian.com. Of those 4 books that we wrote on men's mental health, the first one I'm narrating for Audible, and so the first one's available. I had to make me an MP3 that I could give away of the audiobook unabridged. So if you go to thementalhealthcomedian.com, put an email address, you can download the MP3 unabridged audiobook, the first book. So
there you go. All right. Well, check out the website. Check out the socials. If you're ever thinking about doing a TEDx talk, Frank is the guy to go to. He'll help make it happen. As long as you got something worth
yes,
talking about.
it's gotta be a good idea. And here's the thing with TEDx, they want you to change the world. So as you're thinking, if it's on your bucket list, as you're thinking, now what could I say in 12 to 18 minutes that would be world changer, or at least change the world for some people?
Yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, you could change someone's life, just one
Yeah.
person's life by everything we do, whether it's a click, you're sharing a story. People don't realize the impact that everything could have and how far it can go. One person can be, you help their life and now they're helping someone else. And it just exponentially just helps to just keep people alive when they need it and help people get the help that they need. So
the right information from the right person at the right time can save a life.
Timing is everything. Thanks for coming. We'll talk to you soon. We'll have you on again. I think we're off until next week. I'm going away on a sports trip with my buddies. It's our 20th year doing it. So
Ohio State game?
No, we're going to be in LA. We're going to be in LA for a Trojans game, a Dodgers game, the Rams Sunday night, and then we go to Vegas and see the Raiders Monday night. So
great.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Hope everyone stays well. Be safe. Tune in next week. We got another Wolff Den. Check out Mark Moyer's Win Again Academy event Thursday night. Check us out on LinkedIn, but you can find information at winagainacademy.com. And appreciate it. We'll see everybody soon.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Frank.